Hi, my name is Leon Jongsma, Natural Logic, and today in this video I would like to share with you my insight on communicating with a horse. What do I mean in this context with communication? I mean cueing your horse. Now this is Cash here, and I told her that we might be doing this video today, and then she said, well, okay, because I'm a gray white mare, I'm going to get as dirty as I possibly can just before I get saddled. So I hope I've been able to clean her up enough for this video. But let's get into it. Now, like I said, with communication, I mean cueing your horse. And I've devised 3 simple principles that apply to almost every general situation in where you would ask something of your horse. Now, these principles also have a basis in maybe natural horsemanship, but also in behavioral psychology, just general behavior of animals and humans in general. And just in a way that a horse responds to stimuli and to humans. So let's start a little bit first about what a cue actually is. A cue is what we also call maybe stimuli, or it's basically giving assignment to your horse. You're going to ask something of your horse, like this here. Now, it's important to understand in this sense that stimuli or a cue is what we also call pressure, but there's many different things that can be pressure to a horse. When you first start to teach a horse to deal with a saddle, putting that saddle on his back is pressure for that horse. It's pressure he has to learn to deal with and not respond to. So when we talk about cue, it's usually that we talk about pressure, but pressure can be many things. For a wild horse, even having a human in proximity of maybe 4 or 5 meters can be a lot of pressure. But for domesticated horses, that's because they're used to it, it's okay. So let's start with principle number 1. Principle number 1 is cue, all your cues, your pressure builds up. Now, builds up in amount. So what do I mean by that? If I was to bend Cash her head to the left here, I'm gonna pick up this rein and try to ask her to get her head, follow my hand this way. But what I mean is, if I build up that pressure, I'm gonna start really small, and then I'm gonna up that pressure to a little bit more until she lets go. So I'm gonna start as small as I can, but I'm going to be as firm as I need to get the job done. Now, this is also not something really new, but it can be really difficult to apply and practice. And this goes for every cue that you give. Bending the head, start small until you get what you want. But building up can mean like you start at 0.1 kilograms, and then maybe 0.2, 0.3, 4, 5, 6, till you get to 1 kilo, and then you maybe go to 1.1, 1.2, so it really gradually builds up. So that's principle number 1. Principle number 2 is a little bit more in depth, and you can really chew out this subject a lot. It's what's known as operant conditioning. And the principle is that you keep applying pressure until you get what you want. Now, this is, again, nothing new. Many great horsemen have taught these rules, but like I said, I've tried to put them together so it's a little easier to apply. So you keep applying pressure until you get what you want. Now, what do I mean by that? Again, if I was going to bend Cash her head to the left here, I'm going to start small, but then I'm going to build, and then as soon as I get her head there, I'm going to release. As soon as she gets where she needs to be, I'm going to let go. So the timing of letting go is what this rule or this principle is all about. And that's what's known as operant conditioning. Now, there are several kinds of operant conditioning, but this way is what's called negative reinforcement. Now, the word negative here can be a little bit confusing, because it's not really about negative or positive in a moral value sense. It just means that you have positive and you have negative reinforcement. Now, negative is this, what we just talked about, letting go. So it's taking something away. That's why it's called negative. Positive reinforcement can be like if you give your horse a treat when he does what you want. That's positive reinforcement. It's not that the one is better than the other, but positive in this sense means doing something, and negative means stop doing something. So that's what the difference really is. Now, in this principles, it's all about just the negative reinforcement, and it's a very powerful thing for a horse because you can teach him a lot of things with this principle. Now, I showed you a little bit here. If you get what you want, you're going to release. Now, the timing of that is really critical. You release the pressure, you take the pressure away as soon as you get the behavior that you want. Now, let's say, for instance, you have two horses in a herd together and one's more dominant than the other. So this is also natural behavior for horses. If the dominant horse wants to move the other horse away, he will maybe pin his ears and move aggressively towards that other horse. And as soon as that less dominant horse moves away, then the dominant horse is going to stop showing that behavior. He's going to stop pinning his ears, going to stop moving towards. He will actually almost drop himself to whatever it was he was going to do. So it's a natural thing for a horse to communicate with each other also in this way. Now, what's also a little bit important in this rule is that you really have to know what it is that you want. Sometimes you put pressure somewhere, but you want no reaction from the horse. Again, like I said with the colt and the saddle, or there's many other different situations in where you put pressure on the horse, but you don't want a reaction. Now, let's say, for instance, what a good example might be is if you wanted to give your horse a dewormer. This is something that for many people or horses can be difficult because the horse doesn't want to let you do it. And this is an example of where operant conditioning, or taking your pressure away at the right time, can be really powerful. Is that, for instance, if I wanted to give her a dewormer, like here, and I put my dewormer right to her face here, and she goes, "Oh, I don't want that, it's strange," like assume that she has no idea what it is. If I take that, I'm caught off guard, I don't expect that behavior, she goes with her head like that, and I take that dewormer away. At that moment, I taught her there that if she jerks her head away, then that pressure of that dewormer is going to go away. So this is where adverse reactions to dewormer or any other thing that you have to do to your horse starts. Just because you took the pressure away at the wrong time. Now, what you want to do there is, okay, dewormer, she goes, ah, and you keep your hand there, but don't try to stick it in. Just leave your hand there. Just keep it there, because pressure, behavior, then don't change the pressure stays the same until the behavior goes to where you want it, okay? So you keep your hand there, she goes, ah, okay? And then as soon as she goes there, then take it away. So as soon as you get the behavior, if you get what you want, you take the pressure away. So it's not about getting into a fight with the horse or, trying to stick that dewormer in. It's about teaching them to accept it. And then, all you have to do is keep that pressure there until they drop their head, relax, and let you do it. And then you take your hand away. Then you go, yeah, but I didn't get the pace in. No, not yet. Repeat that several times. A horse has to learn things in a repetitive way. They will learn this from one go. But let's say you're trying to fill out a loading bar. The first time is 10%. The second time you get the desired response is 20%, 30%, 40%. Okay, maybe you've repeated it 10 times, and maybe the 8th, 9th, and 10th time they didn't respond at all, and you could take it away. Okay, so then go put the paste in. And that's where, for the next time you have to go deworm them, it'll be a lot easier. You don't have to do that same struggle that you did the first 7 times. They will remember this, and the next time you can maybe do it in 2 or 3 times, and then after that you can just stick it in and put the paste in. So that's really how you can teach them to accept a lot of things as well, because you are looking for no reaction. Now, this can also mean the same thing for giving a horse maybe their vaccinations. This is also a principle that can be really useful for veterinarians. And I haven't seen as many that have really mastered this, but if the same thing, if you're trying to stick this needle in and you get into a fight, don't try to stick the needle in, just leave your hand there until the horse relaxes and then take your hand away again. And if you go like this and they go, oh, you're going to prick me, you're going to prick me, just leave your hand there until they relax and take it away. Repeat it, and then maybe the 8th, 9th time, you can stick that needle in, and then maybe repeat it a couple of times again because you did something bad there, but you know, repeat it a couple of times. And then the next time you're going to go vaccinate that horse, it's going to be a lot easier. All right. So rule number 2, keep the pressure until you get what you want and really know what it is that you want. Okay. Now, we're going to go to the 3rd principle, which is that most cues that you give are rhythmic. Now, what do I mean by that? I said most because it doesn't go for everything, but I teach my horses if I bump my leg that they drop their head. If you watch my leg closely here, I'll take one step forward here. See, her head's kind of too high. Maybe if I'm sitting on X now and I'm doing a show pattern, I want to show the judge that my horse is relaxed, so I want to be able to drop their head. I just keep my butt in the saddle. But the rhythm is about what I'm going to do with my leg right now. I'm going to bump, 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 bump until I get what I want, and then my leg goes away. Now, as you've seen there, I bumped it in a rhythm. It's 1, 2, 3. Now again, maybe if I'm walking and I want my horse to move a little bit faster here, I'm going to bump, bump, bump in the rhythm of that walk. Okay. Maybe I want to go do a small circle here. I'm going to bump my inside leg. So watch my left leg here. Bump, 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 bump. It has the rhythm of the walk. Now the same thing applies if I'm jogging. This rhythm, the rhythm that I'm talking about in this principle, is always the rhythm of the gait that you're in, or the rhythm that you want the horse to pick up. So here I'm bumping my inside leg, bump, 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 because that's the rhythm of the jog. All right. Even if I may be bumping my hand, for instance, if I want to go turn around here, she doesn't give me enough nose to the inside. If I bump my rein, bump, 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 until she gives a response that I'm looking for. So why is rhythm such an important thing? It's because also it has a lot of relationship to rule number 2. For a horse, and this can be a little bit difficult at first for a human perspective to understand, is that as long as that rhythm stays the same, it's one question, one cue for the horse. It's one thing. It's a repetitive one cue. Now, this is also where you can get maybe your horse a little bit unresponsive or lazy on your leg or other cue, is because you interrupted the rhythm. For instance, maybe you're not always, you can't always be as conscious to every cue that you're giving when you're riding. So maybe you went like this, you bump and then bump, bump and bump, and you're trying to get your horse to move forward. And here, what I just explained is like bump, bump, bump. That's one thing. If I go bump, 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 that's 2 things. For a horse, I just asked her 2 times the same thing. But maybe if I bumped her 2 times and she didn't respond, and I bumped her again 2 times, for me, I asked her the same thing. But for the horse, I rewarded her in between for not giving a reaction. So that's, again, know what it is you want. And that's the relationship that I mean with rule number 2. If you interrupt the rhythm, you reward the horse that's taking the pressure away. So that's how they can get lazy on some of the cues. So if you're this, and this really goes for leg for the most part, is that if you're bumping your leg, try to do it in the rhythm of the gait that you're in, and keep that rhythm until the horse really goes forward, not before. That might mean that you have to bump it, keep bumping it for a little while until she actually goes forward, or reinforce it with something else. But as soon as you get forward, take your leg away. Rule number 2. Okay. Now, there is a little side note that I wanted to also say about. We covered the 3 principles now, but the little side note in rule number 2 is that sometimes what you want can evolve. Now, what do I mean by that? Is that cashier is quite broke. She's ready to show, and she's been shown. And if you put that in contrast to a horse that's just been started, what you want from the cue that you give is very different. For her, maybe if I bump my leg, it means drop your head, it means collect yourself, it means go a little bit more forward, widen your gait. But for a colt, if I bump my leg a couple of times and they take 2 steps, great, that's what I want, because that colt doesn't know what leg is yet. So as you get further in advancement in training, what it is that you want can evolve. It can become more complicated. It can be more reaction of the horse. So keep that in mind. But the principle stays the same. Okay, I got off it because I wanted to show you also how I do these same principles on the ground. Because if these principles are really new to you, then you might want to practice it first on the ground and not riding, so it's a little bit easier and simpler. Some of these principles, especially the letting go at the right time and also the rhythm, have to become sort of a natural reaction from you as well. Look at it this way: if you're driving your car, if you're driving a bike, you don't think about turning left or right. You just, you don't think about steering the wheel. You don't think about how you're going to take that corner. You just signal and go left. And that's because you've taught your muscles, and this is what's known as muscle memory, is you've taught your muscles to actually steer that steering wheel enough, or your bike wheel, whatever, to take the corner that you're looking at. So it's the same with applying these principles. If I want to bend her head, letting go at the right time for me is almost automatic thing. As soon as I feel that horse release her pressure, I take my pressure away. Now, I like to be able to move my horses in several directions on the ground, and there's basically six directions. The first usually that I start with is that I wanted to be able to move her front feet to the right in this instance, and what I will do is, and this is where the principles already start, is I'm going to just press on her neck here, and I'm going to start as small as I can, and then I'm going to build it up. And then as soon as she takes a couple of steps with her front feet in the right direction, I'm going to take that pressure away. So it looks like this. I'll just press, release. I'll press and release. See there, because she knows, she already responds to it. So even if I wanted to move forward here, I will start small and then pull maybe until she actually moves forward. If I wanted to back up, I can pull the reins, or I can press on her chest. It doesn't even always matter where you put the pressure. As soon as you apply these principles, it will work. Again, pressure, goes more, release. Now here is also maybe a good demonstration of what I mean on the side note, is that I can ask this, and that might be enough. But if I have a more advanced horse, I can ask her maybe more, up my pressure until she actually moves quite a bit faster, and then take my hand away. So you can do this both sides. You can move their front end. You can move their hind end. You can do it here or here. I like to do it here because that's where my leg is. Press. She moves her hind end. I take the hand away. So this way she's really movable on the ground, but when you start with a horse that doesn't know this, it might be a little bit more difficult to get them to go in the right direction. Maybe you have to hold them a little bit here or press a little bit more to get it, but if you apply these principles, it's going to get easier and easier to move your horse in every way. I also teach them, if I put my hand here, that they have to drop their head. That's also where the bridle or the halter sits, so if they ever get stuck with their head, they know to drop it and not fight against it. Same way. I'm not strong enough to jerk a horse's head down. I can't pull a horse's head down if they don't want to. All I did there is just I put pressure on these two muscles, and as soon as the first time you do it, as soon as they go a little bit like that, you take your hand away, and then you advance it from there until you can actually put them all the way down. So that's just by applying the principles. Build your pressure until you get what you want, and do it in a rhythmic way. A rhythmic on the ground, I can also show you when I turn her around. If I'm going to want to turn a complete circle, We're going to press, release, press, release, press, release, press, release, press, release. Oh. Now, like there, if you notice, it's rhythm, rhythm, press, release, press, release. It's one rhythm. So I'm asking one thing for us, but for her, I've rewarded her for every step. But the rhythm comes in because I want to, do a complete turn. I repeat it, and it became rhythmic. Okay. So that's it for all those principles. I hope I've been able to convey the importance of communicating with your horse like this, that in a way that makes sense to your horse. And I hope it will help you be a little bit more successful in communicating with your horse. I thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.